Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Counselors Complex podcast. Gonna give it a few minutes and let some people join in. Hi, Yolanda. Please comment below where you're viewing from. Please like and subscribe, follow, share. Give it a few minutes, let some more people join in. Thank you for watching. Today, we're going to have a really good topic, a very much needed topic. We're going to be talking about sexual assault awareness. And I have a special guest on today that actually works with sexual assault survivors and raises awareness about sexual assault every day. So I'm really excited about talking to her. So she'll be on in a few minutes. Thank you for joining. Please like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, JL Counseling. You could follow me and like me on all of the social media platforms at JL Counseling LLC. Hello. If you guys have any questions that you would like to submit anonymously, I'm going to put in the chat. You can go to this website and you will use the code, and I'll put the code in the chat as well. Okay, so I put the website in the chat, and I put the code to submit anonymous questions. If you have any questions today about sexual assault or anything like that, you can submit that anonymously, or you can DM me. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to say, I'm going to ask your question anonymously anyway, just for privacy purposes. Thank you for joining, for tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you guys can hear me, because it says my connection is unstable. So I think too many folks in the house are on the Wi-Fi. Okay, I think it's a little bit better now. If you're just tuning in, please comment where you are viewing from. If you're viewing from Shreveport, if you're somewhere else, let us know. I always like to see where people are viewing from. We'll give it 1 minute, let some more people join in, and then we'll get started. We started at 8:05. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. So today we're talking about sexual assault awareness. Hi, Dietrich from Shreveport. Thank you for tuning in. So we're going to be talking about sexual assault awareness today. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, for those who didn't already know. And our local advocacy center has done a phenomenal job at hosting educational events and different things throughout the community and throughout the state for the last 3 weeks in April. So it's a pretty big deal. I've been fortunate enough to participate in some things with Project Celebration as well. And so I am really happy today to have somebody from Project Celebration to join us today to talk about sexual assault awareness and to answer some very important questions regarding sexual assault and how to keep ourselves safe, how to keep our family, our children safe, and just how to deal and cope with the unfortunate event of being sexually assaulted, because we know that it does happen often, happens more often than what we think or what we like to believe, and it often goes unreported. So I'm going to introduce my special guest. Her name is Danita Washington, and she is a native of Shreveport, Louisiana, and a high school graduate of Woodlawn High School. Woodlawn, woo-hoo. I love Woodlawn. I worked there for about a year and a half. So, hold on, I lost my spot. Okay, so after high school, she spent 1 year at Centenary College and later transferred to Southern University at Shreveport. There, she was very involved academically and socially, and her most memorable accomplishment was reigning as Miss Susla 2014 to 2015. So you're a fellow pageant queen too. Yes. Now, no wonder we hit it off so well. Okay. Upon the completion of her associates in biology, Danita continued her educational career at Southern University A&M College, where she obtained her bachelor's in biology. She also was inducted into the Fall 17 line of Pi Sigma Epsilon Business Fraternity. After undergrad, she moved back home to Shreveport, Louisiana, and began a graduate program with Louisiana State University at Shreveport, obtaining her Master's of Public Health, which she completed May of 2021. During her tenure of this program, she interned with Project Celebration, which she later joined as a full-time employee in August of 2021. So she must have made a phenomenal impact during her internship. Okay, Danita currently serves as the sexual assault educator and prevention coordinator with Project Celebration. She is responsible for networking with community partners, stakeholders, providing community education, and implementing programs within the community that prevent sexual violence. Danita also works weekend shifts as a sexual assault advocate, in which she responds to hospital calls for sexual assault victims. So we'll have to ask her about that process during the show. Her work allows her to utilize her educational experience while fulfilling a purposeful career. She thoroughly enjoys her work and being able to make a difference, especially within her community. So I would like to bring to the stage Miss Danita Washington. Hi,
Good
Danita.
evening. Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to join. And I know y'all are super busy during the month of April and October. So I was like, look at me asking all last minute to get somebody
It's
on.
no problem.
I appreciate you for taking the time out during your busy schedule to come talk about this. But I know that it's something you're passionate about, and all the ladies that work at Project Celebration are passionate about sexual abuse awareness, and sexual assault awareness, and domestic violence as well. So
Mhm.
thank you so much. So, like I said, if anybody has any questions throughout the program, feel free to comment, and or you can also go to Slido, SLIDO.com, and submit your question there anonymously using the code hashtag 073272. And I put that in the chat as well. Thank you, Mosetta Washington. Thank you for joining us. So let's get started with the questions. I first want to just put a disclaimer up that some of the topics that we talk about today might be a little triggering. Like I said, a lot of people experience sexual assault. And so if you need to pause, take a break, or turn it off, please practice self-care. And you could come back and join us later. This will be on replay right after the show. So don't feel like you have to sit here and take it all in at one time, because it can be a little difficult to talk about, especially if it's something you've experienced or somebody close to you has experienced. So just take care of yourself. All right. So, Danita, so tell us a little bit about just your day to day, what do you see on day to day? Because when you talk about your job, I mean, it going to hospital calls for sexual assault victims, like that sounds like pretty heavy stuff. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do every day.
So, with my position, I'm responsible greatly for prevention awareness. So, there's working in the community, providing education curriculums, going out, talking to young kids, letting them know about healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, body safety, going with partners and doing health fairs. So, individuals will know that what resources are available for sexual violence, for domestic abuse, and then, like I said, I do also complete sexual assault calls, which is mostly on the weekend because I do the prevention awareness part throughout the week. But on those weekends calls, you have a call, and we have a call center. So an individual would make a call to the call center, or police would make a call to the call center, and we would get contacted. We will go out to the hospital, at which hospital it is, whether it be Piermont, North, LSU. And we get there, and we mainly go as advocates to support the victim. So once you have experienced trauma, especially if you've never been in an environment that's been hostile, or you've never been in an environment where you have to feel uncomfortable, that's going to be a scary place for you. Even if you have grown up in that type of environment, it's still a scary place for you. So it's just to bring that victim that peace of mind to know, hey, we're here for you. We're going to let you know what your resources are, what your options are. Because once you've been violated in that manner, the main thing that we want to let them know is whatever choice you choose to make is your choice. So whether you want to report that, whether you want to have evidence collected, all of that is your decision. So it's going, letting them know what their options are, what they can do, and just being their support system for them, so they won't feel like they're alone and they won't feel scared, and they'll know that they have someone there that's going through the process with them.
Right. So you basically answered my question after a call is made to the hotline, what happens next? Because I think a lot of people don't know, what that looks like, or they're already so afraid and so distraught. So I'm sure that it is helpful to have somebody there. Do you find that people are receptive to you guys, or are they a little, just on edge or fearful? How are the responses usually when you guys show up?
Absolutely. Since I've been working, I've never come in contact with someone who isn't receptive. They may be a little bit apprehensive at first because, of course, I don't know who you are. I've just been violated. I've just experienced a trauma. So you have to go in, and you can't just go in and look at it as this is a job and I'm just getting a position done. Each person is different. You can't go in and use the same technique with every person. You have to really go in and meet that person where they are. You have to make yourself relatable to them and approachable to them, and let them know that you are there to just be a helping hand for them. So initially, you may go in, you may have some people who are open and they're willing to talk to you, and you build that conversation and that communication with one another off the small talk,
Mhm.
and you end up building a bond shortly to where they trust you. Some people, they may not be as easily to build a bond with initially. They may just want you to stand there and not talk.
Mhm.
They may just want you just to be there. So you have to know what someone needs,
Mhm.
even if they can't verbally tell you what they need. So you have to make sure you're looking out for body language. You have to look for the body cues and everything to just be the best resource that they need at that moment. So once you go there, like I say, you can kind of decipher what that person is needing at that time.
Right, right. I really like that. Like meeting them where they are and just allowing them full autonomy to, if you want to talk, I'm here. If you just want me to listen, that's fine too. Because everybody is different in how they respond to
Right.
being assaulted. So you mentioned earlier about you tell them their options. So share with us, what would some of those options be if we were to be in this type of situation?
So when you initially come out, it depends on if officers were already involved or if they weren't involved. So let's say it's a scenario where an officer is not involved. So I'm getting a phone call and I'm going to the hospital, and it's just an individual who has came in and stated that they were sexually assaulted to the hospital. Well, the hospital then calls an advocate out. We come out and let them know, one, you can either decide to report the incident and also try to have evidence collected, or
Mhm.
you can decide to have evidence collected but not report the incident to an officer, but you
Okay.
still have the evidence collected, or they can just choose to not have evidence collected or report to an officer at all and just receive medical care. So they have a 72-hour time frame, so up to 3 days to collect evidence. So if someone comes in that first day and it hasn't been 72 hours since the assault and they're not comfortable with collecting the evidence, we don't try to coerce them into whatever decision they make. We just let them know the options that are available. But if they
Mhm.
do decide, hey, I'm not ready right now, or hey, I want to come back with someone that I know that could be a support system for me, whatever reason they decide that they may want to come back, they do have that 72-hour time frame. But those are the three options. So reporting, making a report to the officers and having evidence collected, not reporting to the officers, but still having their evidence collected, or not reporting at all. Now, if an individual calls an officer and they report the sexual assault to the officer directly, um, the report has to be made because the officers are already involved. Now,
Okay.
once the report is made, a reporting officer will come out. Their reporting officer will get in contact, and this is the same for if you decide to make the report once you make it to the hospital. Once a reporting officer is involved, a sex crimes detective will get involved, and then it's determined whether or not to collect evidence and move forward. And if that patient wants to collect evidence, then we move forward with having the nurse come out and do the evidence collection.
Gotcha, gotcha. So how important is it? I know we don't want to like coerce people into doing that if they don't want to, but how important is it to get the collection of that evidence within the first 72 hours?
Oh, it's detrimental because, like I say, after that 72 hours, you can't really collect.
Mm.
Especially if you're going throughout the day, you're taking showers, or you're just changing clothes, just doing general things about the day. Um, you're constantly coming in contact with the new people. You're constantly rubbing your body off, so it's going to be harder to try and collect that evidence as time goes by. But after that time frame is normally not collected because the time frame has passed.
Right, right. So it's probably a lot harder to detect DNA
Right.
after that point.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think that is so important for people to know just about those, like what happens after the call. Yeah.
Right.
Because
And a
normally
lot of people.
kind of skip that part and we just go to like the court part and
Right.
yeah.
And it's scary. It's definitely something that, like I said, I tell people all the time, you don't know what that person is feeling, what
Mhm.
it's like to have to make that call, what it's like to have to come into an environment and tell some people that you don't know that you've been violated and that something has been done out of your control. So it takes a lot of strength, and I tell people all the time, and I think all of the advocates tell victims when we go in that you're brave to make that call and to come in because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength within yourself to be able to come and tell your story. So,
Yeah, because many people don't, and many people go years and years and years, and they never say anything, and they
right,
just kind of live with that. Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in all the way around.
absolutely.
For those who are just tuning in, we're talking about sexual assault awareness. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I have Miss Danita Washington here with Project Celebration, and she is talking to us a little bit about what the process is after you were to make a call to the hotline. My next question is probably something that we all want to know. What are some ways that we can protect ourselves from being sexually assaulted? Is that preventable? I mean, is like what? How do we go about that?
So the thing with that is, of course, we always want to give you ways to have protection. So you can safety plan. Say, for instance, you're going out, make sure you're going with a group. Don't go by yourself. If you're out at a party or if you're out at a club, make sure you're watching your drink. If you sit a drink down, don't return to that drink. Don't drink that. Watch your surroundings. Make sure you're being observant. But even with all of those things, there's really nothing that a victim can or cannot do which would have changed their outcome. It's never your fault. It's not like you can look back and say, well, I should have changed this outfit, or maybe if I would have left earlier, or maybe if I would have went with more friends, or it's nothing that you can go back and change from having that perpetrator having that desire or that want to assault someone. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's nothing wrong with, always having safety plans and being observant and trying to make your surroundings safe
Yeah.
and try to prevent things from happening. Of course, that's what we all want. You want to prevent it, but at the end of the day, if even if you are assaulted, you've done your part. You did what you were supposed to do to try to be safe. You have done what you were supposed to do to try to have a good time if you're going out. So it's nothing really that you can tell a victim or tell anybody to say, well, this will 100% prevent you from being assaulted.
Right, right. And I love that you said it's not your fault. Like there's really
No,
nothing that, and that's really sad to say, like there's nothing that we can really do to control this other person's actions or choices to assault someone.
exactly.
And that is really disturbing and anxiety provoking for a lot of women in particular. I know men get assaulted as well, but I think the majority of survivors and victims are women and
Hmm.
children. And we'll go into some more of those statistics in a moment. But that really is quite scary and discouraging for women and for just people in general to just be able to go out and enjoy themselves. Why can't I have a drink? Why can't I just sit my drink down and trust that nobody is going to mess with it? And so that is very unsettling. So it is a good idea to safety plan and just to really think ahead. I think because predators are so calculated, you have to think ahead and think like a predator almost to see,
Hmm.
you know, what might give somebody an opportunity. Um, but then even, we talk about staying in groups and doing that, but a lot of times people are hurt by the very people that they know and trust. It's not
Exactly.
always like a stranger on the street or some creepy man behind the alley somewhere. And so that leads me to my next question. Are there certain traits to look out for to spot a perpetrator?
No. um, and I thought about that question, and I thought, are there? And there really aren't,
Mhm.
because it can be like you say, it could be the creepy man that that lives next door, but it very well could be the well dressed groom man who goes to work 8 to 5 every day and come home and has a family and seems to keep his house clean and has his lawn mowed. So I mean, it's you really can't look at a person and determine by their actions
Mhm.
whether or not they're a perpetrator. You would think you could say, oh well, that person kind of looks sketchy,
Mhm.
but a lot of times it's the person that doesn't look sketchy that
Right.
you see. So a college athlete doesn't look sketchy. A CEO doesn't look sketchy.
Yeah.
Your manager or your boss doesn't look sketchy. So
Mhm.
I mean, it's really no trait that you can say. Of course, if someone is being overly sexualized towards you or saying inappropriate things, then yeah, you would look at that person in retrospect and say, okay, maybe I need to watch out for them a little bit more. But that's not to say just because a person is not displaying those characteristics that they aren't perpetrators. So
Mhm.
yes, you do want to look out for those individuals who display certain things that make you feel uncomfortable or make you feel like, hey, this person may be watching me a little bit too closely, or this
Mhm.
person is keeping up with me too closely. Definitely watch out for those signs, but you can't just take someone off the book just because they aren't displaying those signs either.
Right, right. And that makes me think about, like you mentioned, like college athletes where people love them and, like they're just very much put on a pedestal. We look at celebrities like R. Kelly, like Bill Cosby, and people say, well, they don't have to rape anybody because who wouldn't want to have sex with this person? But they definitely don't look creepy.
Right.
um, I'm sure they don't necessarily act creepy until you might get behind closed doors, and then you're very much surprised as to what they're into. So you can't judge a book by its cover. And I
Mhm.
always see, like, on some of these social media news sites, and they'll show a picture of a perpetrator that's been arrested, and people will say, "Oh yeah, he looks like a sex offender or something." And I'm like, what does a sex offender look like? Like, and
Exactly.
and we are thinking about somebody that may look a little strange visually. And I think that's where we always get so caught up, because we are discounting that this nice looking, friendly guy or woman could actually be a predator. And I'm not sure what the statistics are, like the actual numbers, but I think I did hear that most assaults happen from somebody that you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that just goes to show you. And typically we don't hang out with creepy people. So that
Right.
should show you that should
Absolutely.
that, it could really be anybody. Um,
Definitely.
Thank you to those who are tuning in. We're talking about sexual assault awareness. Please be advised that some of the things we talk about may trigger you. So, if at any point you need to take a break, please feel free to do so. So moving on, Danita, my next question that kind of leads into, what do I do if my child is touched inappropriately or made to do sexual acts by another child? Because we think about, calling the police or making a report for an adult doing something to a child. But, I used to work for child protection. I worked for protection for about 2 years. And so sometimes we would have incidents where it would be like a sibling touching or assaulting a younger sibling that maybe be a really small sibling, or they may just be kind of close in age, or they may assault another child like a friend or something. So what happens with that? Like, what do you recommend for parents to help their children if that happens?
So one, you definitely still want to report. A lot of people may feel like, well, will anything happen to the child? Depending on the age, they may or may not be prosecuted. If they're too young, no, they probably won't be prosecuted. But it still needs to be reported because something needs to be investigated as to why that child felt it was okay to assault another child. What are they seeing? What is their environment? Encouraging them or teaching them that it's okay to do that. So you reporting it not only is helping your child, but it's helping that child who has committed the assault.
Right.
Two, you would really want to look for counseling for that child. Make sure that that child is getting the support that they need to understand that this is not okay. It wasn't their fault, and it's not something that should be done to them. That parent or that guardian would want to seek counseling as well because this is going to affect them. I've seen a lot of parents who blame themselves and they feel like, oh, well, if I wasn't working so much, or I should have known, or I should have saw the signs. And again, it's nothing that you are lacking in. It's not your fault. At the end of the day, it's not your fault. But you definitely want to make sure that the individuals are receiving counseling. But like I say, so oftentimes the child who committed the assault needs counseling as well and need resources as well because it's apparent that a child should not even know about those things, yet alone have the desire to do it to another child. So you definitely want to make sure that they get those resources that are needed to, receive counseling. And even beforehand, before any of this starts, you want to start talking to your children about body safety. So you want to have those, and I know that those discussions can be uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and parents may, feel like, well, my child's too young to know about that right now.
Never too
But I
young.
say it all the time, like in today's society, with technology that we have, with the apps that we have, almost every child has a cell phone or an iPad or some type of access to the internet. If you don't tell them, the internet will. It's not even their friends will anymore, it's the internet will. So even in the cartoons, they have play on body, language and sexual language within cartoons. So if you let your child know what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and it doesn't have to be anything that's explicit, but just letting them know, this is good touch, this is bad touch, and also letting them know that sometimes good touch is still bad,
Mhm.
because they may be touched in a way that doesn't hurt them or make them feel bad, but it may make them uncomfortable and make them feel like, well, I've never felt this before. Well, there's
Mhm.
still an inappropriate touch. So you want to speak to them on those accounts. And overall, with this issue, like I said, you still will want to report it, because 9 times out of 10, if a parent has a child that's been sexually assaulted by another child, they probably don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. So officers could definitely guide them into the right direction of what resources they would need to move forward and heal from that.
Right. And I think that that's a big fear that a lot of parents or grandparents or whoever the caregiver is, that's why they don't report it. But then if your child who is assaulting other kids is not getting the help they need, and those kids that they've assaulted are not getting the help that they need, it's going to repeat the cycle. So
Exactly.
you're really going to get in trouble because you know that this is going on and you're not acting. So
Hmm.
if you have no idea and it happens and you find out, the best thing for you to do is to act. But
Right.
if you continuously allow this to happen and you just turn your head to it, like then you're going to get in a lot of trouble with the court system, and then CPS is
Right.
called and children are removed. So and acting is so important. You just don't know how much that helps a victim when their family supports them and believes them and acts and
Yes.
does something to help them. That helps them to heal a lot better and a lot faster than some people that go 20, 30 years and they've never gotten counseling. I work with adults in my practice, and many of them had experienced things as a child and nobody ever took them to counseling. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, wow. And I know it's a generational thing, but even now, like I've worked with like teenagers at Woodlawn, and many of them had been sexually assaulted and molested and all of those things, and they never received counseling for that. And it just broke my heart that they're just like holding on to that every day. And it's not something
Right.
you just get over,
No.
So,
And a lot of times, once kids have been assaulted, um, you have kids that are in the school system, and it's like, oh, they're the problem child,
mhm,
or they're acting out, or this child is just, the deviant of the class. And it's not that, it's that they don't know how to relay the information that they need to relay. A lot of times, even in communication with grown-ups, we don't know how to effectively communicate. So how can you expect the child to be able to effectively communicate that I'm not being bad or I'm not intentionally meaning to be disruptive or disobedient? It's just that I've dealt with some trauma and I don't know how to relay that to you. And a
right.
lot of times they don't know how to relay it because one, it has been someone that's in their family or that's close to them. So they're scared to tell, because at the end of the day, their perpetrator is still somebody that they love, that they know. So they don't want to get them in trouble.
Mhm.
So,
Right, right, exactly. Because if it's your brother or somebody, and they love you, but they just have not, they've been exposed to things maybe too early or something like
hmm.
that. So that leads me to my next question. So, what are some ways to protect our children from being sexually assaulted? Now, we talked about us like going out in groups and things like that, but what are some things parents can do to prevent their child? I know Like my mom, ooh, she like had me paranoid as a kid, and it was, I know it wasn't her intention to make me feel that way, but I was so scared that somebody would do that to me. And luckily, I didn't have that happen because I think she was, just very vigilant about that. And I appreciate her for that. But because of her childhood abuse, she was very like adamant about like, no sleepovers, just being very cautious about who could babysit me. Like I think I had one babysitter
Mhm.
in my, during my entire childhood. And it was because, it was for like a couple of hours and they knew her, so like what are some things, I know there are some things that I do with my kids, but what are some things that you would say or suggest for parents?
So, like I say, first, initially, just having that conversation, and not even leading into that conversation, just starting off with that conversation, just build a trusting relationship with your kids,
Mhm.
so they feel comfortable to be able to come and talk to you. Even in their failures and disappointments, they still are able to come to you and let you know what's going on with them. Therefore, when you talk about more kind of serious issues like this, it's easier to talk about. But you
Right.
want to talk about that body safety, like I say, making sure they know about wrong touch, right touch. And even so, when children are hesitant or reluctant to hug people,
Mhm.
or they don't want to go over certain relatives' houses or things like that, please do not force them to do so.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like, and like if it's the holidays and you see Uncle Joe and Uncle Joe wants a hug and you don't want to hug Uncle Joe, your mom's like, give Uncle Joe a hug. Well, Uncle Joe may be, a perpetrator, and
Yeah.
it's a reason why that child is reluctant to go around them.
Right.
But teach your children's boundaries
Mhm.
and practice that with them, because for instance, when you force them to hug Uncle Joe, that's letting them know that their boundaries are not being respected,
Right.
and that
But you feel
even though, yeah, like it's being invalidated. So teach your children about boundaries, but also respect their boundaries. And of course, your children still have to have guidelines and boundaries that you set, because they're children and they don't know everything. But even little kids as young as 2 and 3, kids know what they want and what they don't want.
Mhm.
So it's important to start setting boundaries with them at a young age so they know what boundaries are, and then they be comfortable to set boundaries, because you see some people who are yes people and they just try to appease everybody, and they don't know how to set boundaries for themselves. So when you don't know how to set boundaries as well, that leaves you open and vulnerable, because you're more prone to accept things that you even don't want done, but you don't know how to tell someone no. So making sure you're speaking with them about their body safety, right touch, wrong touch, and making sure you're going over boundaries with them and practicing those boundaries in the home and outside the home as well. So they'll know, well, this is something that I can set for myself. Mommy and daddy, or mommy, or just daddy, however the house is set up. The guardian that I live with respect this boundary. So this adult should respect this boundary as well.
Right, right. I think that it's so important for us as parents too to be like, if your child doesn't want you to come into the bathroom with them, then you respect that. Or if your child doesn't want you to help them to get dressed or to wipe them, because I know sometimes when they're little, they don't do the best job, but you know, we have to teach them that we respect their boundaries. And I say this in a previous episode, we did not become parents to just boss somebody around,
Right.
like to control, have this robot to control. That's not what kids are. And so, they're not being rude because they're saying they don't want to hug so and so, or they don't even want to hug you. I think sometimes, and there's been times I wanted a hug from my daughter, and she's like, no, and I feel like, oh, like I really want to hug, but we feel, slighted or rejected. And so we're like, give me a hug, but
Mm-hmm.
you really shouldn't do that. And I've had to practice that as well, just so I can teach my kids, no, when you say no, like it's okay. Like you,
Right.
you don't have to give me a hug, or if you're mad, you don't have to give me a kiss. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Um, and then also, like, another big thing I know that we talk about often is like teaching your kids the technical terms of their private parts. So, vagina, penis, because, and a lot, I think that's very strange for some people just because they weren't taught that. But like my kids knew a vagina and a penis, they knew those technical terms when they were like 2 years old because
Right.
you want them to know so that there's no confusion if anything does happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then even to double back, how you were saying about if they don't want you to come in the bathroom, because when they're younger, they may not clean themselves well. That can be a teachable moment because you can go in and you can say, "Well, okay, I understand that you want to do it on your own, but may I have consent to help you?" So that way, you're teaching them two different things. Like, not only have you respected their boundaries, but you haven't impeded their boundaries, but you have asked for consent, and they either say, "Well, yes, mommy, you can help me," or you say, "No, mommy, I don't need help." But you're teaching them that consent and boundaries all at the same time. So that's very important.
Right. And Miss Angela, hey, Miss Angela, thank you for watching. She says consent crosses all age groups, and that is
Hmm.
so important. So that leads me to my next question. Y'all are just on the roll here. Y'all just got it flowing. Okay. So what is consent? Because a lot of people don't know what that is. So what is that? What does that actually mean?
Consent, easily put, is permission. um, you have to have their permission from someone to touch them, to engage in activity with them. Um, it's just someone letting you know, okay, I'm okay and I agree with what's going on, or I'm comfortable with what's going on. But if that person is not comfortable, if they don't want to engage in the activity and they say no, you don't have consent. And I think a lot of times, especially with sexual assault, people tend to not realize if you are involved with someone or you have previously been sexually intimate with someone and they say that they no longer want to have intimacy with you, that consent is not like a continuous consent form. You have to
Right.
receive consent each time. Um, Even if you're in the act and someone says, "Hey, I want to stop," but you continue, that consent has been revoked, and you therefore have pushed past their consent. They revoke consent from you. So a lot of people feel like, well, we were already engaged and it was consent when we started, but it was not consent the entire time of the activity or the engagement. So when someone tells you no, you're supposed to stop. But like I said, consent is just having that permission from the individual that whatever you all are involved in, it's an agreement between both people and both parties that they are comfortable with what's going on.
Right, right. So consent, you have to ask every single time. You just can't just take it. They said yes one time, so this time, because even if we're thinking about, being intimate with someone, they might consent to this, but not to what else you want to do.
Exactly.
So that's why talking about that is so important and being comfortable and confident speaking up for yourself. These are my
Hmm.
boundaries, and I don't want to do that, but we can do this.
Hmm.
Um, so that leads me to my next question. So, is it considered rape if it is done by a spouse, partner, boyfriend, or girlfriend? I think that's a very common misconception people have, especially when we're looking at, like, from a religious standpoint. We talk about your body belongs to your spouse, and a lot of times that can be used against a victim with spiritual abuse and things like that. So, what do you say to that?
It's definitely still considered rape. Um, Boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, definitely. And even so, more so specifically with spouses, because when you get married, a lot of times in the perspective of a woman, you're supposed to be submissive to your spouse. And it's almost as if society has deemed it an obligation for you to provide that intimacy for your spouse. But if you're not in that mood and if you're not wanting it, just because it's your husband or just because it's your boyfriend or your partner, they don't have the right to just take it.
Right.
So, having that marriage license or having that title as someone's partner, does not deem you access or grant you access at whatever time that you want it. You still have to receive consent for that. And there have been cases where husbands have been arrested for raping their wives. And I know a lot of people, and I think I saw a case on Facebook not too long ago. Someone posted it, and the gentleman was like, "That's crazy. How can that be? And that's his wife." And I was like, well, she didn't say that she wanted it and he forced himself on her. That's still considered rape. I understand that that's her husband and they live in the same household. And I think that's where people don't look at it as the same, because you're staying in the same household, you sleep in the same bed, you're around each other 24/7. But it's still the fact that if that person does not grant you consent, if your wife does not say, yes, that's okay, or if they tell you no, you have to respect their wishes and not and act on it.
Right, right. So I want to touch on the statistic about men, because I think this would shock a lot of people, and and we can kind of dive into this a little bit deeper. So we talk about, so if you look at like Lil Boosie and how he had a prostitute have sex with his son, um, whatever's going on in his mind as far as being a parent, I guess he feels like this is going to help his son become a man or be manly. And so that is technically rape. Um, so 1 in 3 men have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And I hear often, ever since I was like a teenager, I would hear boys my age or older say, I lost my virginity when I was 9 by a grown woman or by a 16-year-old. And I'm thinking to myself, you didn't lose your virginity. Like it was something
Right.
like it's yes, like, and it broke my heart to be like, you really don't see how it is, like, and I guess that's a part of society, how we kind of uplift boys and young men when they go through that experience versus girls are viewed as fast and all of that, and that's a whole other
Mhm.
conversation. But what do you see? Like, how often do you guys see victims who are males, and what are some things that you can say to any men that might be watching who have been raped or molested and they struggle internally with either their sexuality or feeling like weak? Like, what do you say to that?
Well, with this whole, even with the statistic, when you look at this statistic, or when I look at it, the entire genre that comes to my mind is toxic masculinity. It teaches men to not be sensitive to certain topics. It teaches them that they have superiority over certain individuals, such as women.
Mhm.
And when they are raped, you grow up and you hear people tell young men, "You can't cry," or "You're supposed to be strong," or "Stop being, too soft," and all these type of things. And it teaches guys that, okay, well, I'm not supposed to be this and I'm not supposed to be that. And they did. A lot of people, even when I was growing up, they did claim that as glory to, say, "Hey, well, I slept with an older woman when I was such and such age." And we don't teach our young men that, no, you're being violated. That's not a badge of honor. That's not something that you're supposed to be exposed to, just like young women are not supposed to be exposed to it. You're not supposed to be exposed to it either. You're not supposed to be forced to have to sleep with an older woman. An older woman is not supposed to force you to touch her body or engage in sexual activities with her just because you're a young man. They need to be taught as well that, no, you've been violated, sweetheart, and you need help, you need counseling, and it's okay for you to say that you need that, and you don't have to feel like you're less than a man because you have experienced it. But I think because society has, like you say, Boosie went and got his child a prostitute at 12. And I mean, I think that the mindset of what has been given to young men is that it's okay for you to um, begin this sexual activity at a young age. So even though you may have been violated because society has deemed that as worthy or glorified, they'll take that as a glory and they want to acknowledge it as, hey, I've been violated, or hey, this person didn't ask for consent, or this person didn't respect my boundaries. So young men in general, in the numbers, a lot of men don't report. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of men aren't going to report. And for me personally, what I've seen, I don't see many men call in the hospitals, but I do see a lot of calls coming from inmates.
Wow. Okay.
So, um, I've personally never taken a case for a male in the hospital. I'm pretty sure some now younger male children I've had one or two cases with young males. But as far as a adult or a teenager or young adult male, most of the cases that I've seen come into our hotline is from inmates. And
Mhm.
so um, I always wonder what makes it, and I'm guessing maybe being in in that type of environment, in an enclosed environment, of course, you wouldn't want that type of activity to continuously happen. But it makes me always think if they have the courage to be able to call and speak out, what deters young men who aren't in, correctional facilities to call and report? But a lot of men just they don't make that call, and I think, like I say, I think it's just they don't acknowledge that as it is rape. So a lot of people they don't even feel like they have been raped to even know that they should call and report it as rape.
Mhm. So I think we have to start, and this is probably going to have to start with like our generation of parents and uncles and aunts, like teaching our children and nephews and nieces, like, hey, like this does not mean that this is not something good. Like you need to also like it's okay to not want this.
Right.
And like I feel like a lot of people are less I guess not necessarily protective, and maybe that's a word, but I don't know the word to use. But I think people are just a little bit more relaxed when it comes to their boys, and that's how our boys get got every time. And I just, and I've even, and if you're not exposed to it, or if you don't know somebody who's been through it, and like I know people personally that have gone through sexual assaults. I was worked in child protection, so I know that it can happen to boys, but if you are not aware of that, then you're not going to think about that. So I even tell my husband, like, hey, like, don't leave our son with just anybody, because even
Mhm.
though he's a boy, doesn't mean that this can't happen.
Mhm.
And so I'm that mom that will be bringing my son into the women's bathroom when he's like 14.
Mhm.
And y'all can look at me crazy all you want, but it's not
Not
gonna
my
happen on
baby.
So because you see that happens, like
Yeah.
typically, like it'll be in that age range of like 12 to 14 if they
Mhm.
are going into the men's bathroom by themselves.
Yep.
And it can happen in a split second. You just letting your son just, run around out here. We have a lot of teenagers that are able to just kind of be left to their own devices and just be out all hours of the night. And, there's no true boundaries or, oversight. And that's what happens when, and then you have men who grow up to thinking that either that was normal or they're, questioning their sexuality and all these other things.
Yes.
So it's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so we have about 5 minutes left. I did want to touch on this question before we finished up. So, how does one work through the shame, the guilt, and the fear after being sexually assaulted, and probably a million other emotions? So what happens after the assault, after the court hearings are over, or while they're still proceeding? Because sometimes it takes a long time for those court proceedings to be over with. Like, how does one work through all of that?
It's definitely a continuous journey. Um, I think a survivor will always be a survivor. Um, and not even so much a survivor, but an overcomer.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened to them does not define them. And the journey looks different for everybody. Victims must know, and even those who are closely related to victims and are considering themselves to be a part of their healing journey, you have to understand that the healing journey looks different for everybody.
Right.
Counseling, one, you can't be ashamed to need counseling or afraid. I know with us, Project Celebration, we offer free counseling for individuals. We have group sessions. So finding those resources and finding those individuals that you can surround yourself with that can help rebuild you and build you back up to a stronger person than you were before. Some people come out stronger than they were when they went into this.
Mm-hmm.
So finding those resources where you can um, find yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, because after something like this, you have to reconnect with yourself on so many levels. And I think people don't realize that it's not just mentally and emotionally that somebody has to reconnect with themselves. A lot of times it's physically because people will disassociate themselves altogether. They find themselves not having effective relationships or long lasting relationships because they no longer know how to be in a relationship. They have to know how to rebuild trust. So, counseling and making sure that you have someone who can help you through those steps is definitely important. Um, and just making sure that you show yourself grace because you may go 6 years and gain 30 steps in your healing, and one thing can trigger you a sound, a song, a color, a certain place, and it could set you back what seems like 2 years. The journey, it never is consistent. It's not a straight path. It's loops and turns and dips and rises and highs and lows. So you have to give yourself grace and not criticize or beat yourself because you feel like you should be farther along or you feel like you've been stuck in a certain spot for a long time. um, the journey looks different for everybody, but I definitely would just say making sure that individuals receive that counseling, receive those, go to those support groups because they will help. And I know a lot of people don't like opening up. You don't even have to open up. Sometimes just being in that room with people and hearing other people's story can help you without
Mm-hmm.
you ever having to open your mouth. And eventually you may build the courage or build the desire to, say, hey, well, I'm not what happened to me, and I can tell my story because that's not me. I'm better than that, and I'm going to be stronger than that. So
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for that. I think that that was very, very helpful. The sooner you get counseling, the better. And yes, like being around other people that have gone through something similar. Your stories aren't exactly the same, but they're similar, and you won't feel so alone. Because I can only imagine how lonely that must feel to go through something like that. So definitely get counseling, contact the hotline. I posted the hotline, the local hotline. If you are watching from somewhere else in the country, you can contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline through RAIN. And the number is listed there as well. Danita, I just want to thank you so much for
thank
joining
you
me.
for having me.
Yes, it was so helpful and I loved it. I love talking to you. Um, and I know you're going to continue to do great things. And I hope to have you on again in the future for other topics.
Absolutely.
Because we had another good topic a few weeks ago for your podcast, so it was really great.
Right.
So thank you guys for watching, If you guys are needing any more of these resources, I will put them in the chat for you to use. And please like, share, subscribe. And join me next week. I will be kicking off Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month, talking to you guys about maternal mental health. So everything from pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and beyond, and all the ups and downs related to that. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for watching. Thank you, Danita, and you guys have a good night.
Thank you.